Now, let's see. Make us see. Open our eyes and see whether we cannot discover or uncover a few more Kamite or ancient native Egyptian marks in the book that's known as the book of Genesis, or the book of Bereshith, as the Jews say, or Bereshith, as we say, or according to the King of Kings, Metaf Kedus Orit Ze Fitret. Now, where should we begin? We should begin from the very, very beginning. Now, in the Egyptian or the Kamite beginning, the sky was looked upon as the celestial water. See, this is where we hear about the waters. People say, well, in the beginning, Elohim, which is the same word used for the gods later on. It's a plural word, also translated as gods, but in your King James Bible, this is the first error that's made, the very first error that's made, according to King James. Now, we're not saying that the verb is singular, but the noun definitely is plural. So it's a plural noun acting as a singular he, but it's a plural noun. In other words, that word should be gods. You know what I'm saying? In the beginning, gods, he created the heaven and the earth. But then that would have the idea as though the gods created the heaven and the earth. But isn't this what the first verse is actually implying anyway? But we have to begin with the Kamite. We have to know or seek to be willing to learn what was Muse, what was the wisdom that Moses learned. You see what I'm saying? See, the original Genesis and all the chief types are identifiably Kamite or Kamitan or Egyptian, and we say native, the original, the first Egyptians, not these today and not those other ones, the bootleg Egyptians that came later on. We're talking about the original black Egyptian, the original Kamites, the ones who actually set the foundations for the, they call that the pre-dynastic. You understand? The pre-dynastic, the original way setters, the way makers. Because we learned that in the Egyptian beginning, or the Egyptian Bereshith, or Bereshith, that the sky, the Samai and the Samayat, was looked upon as celestial water. This water was also entified. It was made into an entity, you understand, as an entity below in the river Nile, or what we call the Gihon. This is why it mentions Gihon in connection with Ethiopia, the original Tobia. This Nile river was also called the Hapeh. Hapeh is the beginning and the end of the Ethiopic alphabet. It begins with Ha and it ends with Peh. It's like when they say the Alpha Omega, that's the beginning of the Greek and the end of the Greek. Or in the Hebrew, they'll say the Aleph Tav or the Aleph Tau. That's the beginning of the Hebrew and the end of the Hebrew. How interesting. The beginning of the Ethiopic or the Ge'ez syllabary, or the Fidel, or what you call the alphabet, begins with Ha and it ends with Peh, and the river Nile is called the Hapeh or the Hapi. And when you look at it, this word in hieroglyphs, it's a reclining lion. The head is Ha and the tail part is Peh. So, this water, which in the Egyptian Bereshith, you understand, was the sky, you understand, and this was the celestial water, was entified in the river Nile, which was called, interesting, the river Nile was called the way of the Elohim, the way of the gods, the way of the Elohim. When the nature powers had been divinized, when it was recognizable that the one the true God work through these nature powers, you know what I'm saying, these natural powers, you know what I'm saying, these so-called seven. And we'll touch on that. Now, in that sense, as it was, then we're touching somewhat on Gerald Macy's, and we're annotating it from what we know of the Ethiopic code. In that sense, as it were, the Samayat, or the heavens, the Shemayim, descended to be continued on earth, as above, so below. From this water of heaven, the land in Egypt, or the KAMITE, was visibly deposited, and the earth was, quote, compacted out of water, and by means of water. When these were discredited, there was the dry land. In other words, when the water was removed, then the dry land came about. Isn't this what Genesis is saying in the Bible? This is where Moses learned it. Moses, our brother Moses, did not steal it, as some pseudo-black Egyptologists will say, because they're trying to get back at the so-called white people and white Jews. So they're going to deny that Moses was one of us who actually preserved this ancient truth during a period of time when the Hyksos persecuted not just the native Kamites, but also the Hebrei, the Hebrews. Now here, if anywhere, is the primary, the first hint that we get of a cosmical beginning, a cosmic bereshit. You understand? A cosmic bereshit with a fact that's related directly to a fact that's in nature, the netaru, but not with a theory of nature nor a system of geology. This is where the falsifiers, the Egyptologists falsifies. You understand? And the psychobabble that's put out there, they say, well, the Egyptians, this was their theory about nature, or try to make it some sort of pseudo system of geology. No, the first element was water. This is why the first verses of the scriptures of the Bible speak of water. I remember, I think it was a youth had asked this question years ago. A child, I believe it was. Even we had asked this question. I'm not too sure if it was before the child or was after the child, but the question was, where did the water come from? Notice something about Genesis, the first book. It says, in the beginning, Elohim, God, or gods more correctly, the Netaru, created the heaven, or the heavens, and the earth. Then it goes on to speak about water. But we find nowhere in the so-called Hebrew Genesis where it speaks about the creation of water. Some of y'all may recall, even in the baptism teaching, we spoke about wuha, or water, being a half-spiritual element. You remember that? That water is, by definition, half espiritus. You understand? H2 espiritus is half spiritual element. But there's nowhere in Genesis chapter 1 where it speaks of the creation of water. Water, wuha, was already here. Now, that's the first element. The very first element is water. The first element of life that was recognized by the prime, the primitive, the first, the kedem, the kedamawi, the first perception, the forerunners, they recognized this. Water was considered to be the mother, the imma, the imama, the innat, or the maternal source, as it was personified, as it had its manifest aspect. It was entified as an entity. In Kemet, or in Gibt, which you know as Egypt, the mother of life, the Imahiyal, pours out the water of life from the tree of life. She is the first form of the celestial waterer. Now, in the mystic sense, the blood is the water of life and therefore the mother of life. Now, this beginning on earth with and from water, it was Egyptian, ancient Kamite. It was also known to the Babylonians, to the Mexicans, to the Indian, to the Chinese, to the Greek, to the British. It was universal. So no doubt when Muse wrote his first book, he knew it too.